Well, hello and welcome to Book It, the blog where we talk to authors. And today we have the privilege of interviewing author of a variety of books, Merri Macartney. Welcome, Merri.
Well, thank you, buddy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
That's my pleasure as well. I've been going through your latest book, which is "Don't Die Before You're Dead." I love the title to begin right off the bat. You caught me. But I was reading, I'm one of these guys who I read everything in the book. Some people say, the prologue, why would you read that? But but I read the prologue to your book and I thought right off the bat you set a tone for your book that really carries right on through. How would you characterize the tone you set for your book right off the bat?
Well, I wanted it to be encouraging to people. I wanted it to be uplifting. I thought I could speak to that tone because I've had a lot of challenges in my life, and I still believe that life is meant to be lived. There's a gift there every morning, and we can choose how we want to live it. So I thought, well, with the things I've been through, if I can encourage people to say, just keep getting up and go at it the next day. Bright days come eventually, and sometimes we just have to work through all of that, and especially these days.
Fantastic. It's you refer to your journey in life as a road trip, and I really like that imagery. Um, you talk about how at various times in your life, time moves differently. And can you share a little bit
Yes.
of that with our audience?
Yes, and I think most people can because we know in just simple holidays, let's say for Christmas, sometimes Christmas takes forever to get here and then suddenly, boom, it's over. Other times you might be struggling through some difficulties and it seems to just like walking through mud, just like slogging, swoosh, 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 and you can't seem to
Yeah.
get your feet free of what's pulling you back. And other times you look back and you think, oh my gosh, I remember that like it was yesterday. And I think I believe time is our only non-renewable resource, and it's a treasure we should treat better than we do most times. But our perception of time changes, I think is what I meant by that. But
I totally agree with you. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Roy H. Williams, and he says in his one of his books that you can exchange money for time or time for money, but really the only one you can never get back, you can never get more of, is time. And then he says, how do you invest your time? So
right.
I get really caught up in that kind of thinking. Um, the other thing that in the early part of your book, I came across a list which you called your later list. And I really liked it. I was reading through that and that's me. Oh, that one's me too. But how did you come up with that list? And how do you recommend people who read your book use it?
Well, I think we do tend to put things on the back burner. We believe that time is almost infinite. On a day-to-day basis, we don't stop and really consider every decision because we'd never get anything done. Probably, at least I know I wouldn't. We can get caught in some of the trivia of that. Yet, when you look and say, okay. For instance, married couples, perhaps they'll say, well, we're working hard now and we'll wait until later before we take a cruise, before we, you know, downsize our house and get a cottage or get this boat we always wanted. And there are a whole lot of things that people have, and it's very individualized as to what they might put off till later, after the kids have gone to college, perhaps, or
Yeah.
after maybe we've changed jobs, or maybe after we've retired. Those are common laters, if I can use that as a verb. Um,
Yeah.
Yet my challenge is for myself as well as everyone else is we don't always get later. We're not promised later, and to wait until something we're not sure of in order to really have that enjoyment and what they say suck the marrow out of our life is a big mistake. And I
Yeah.
speak to that with losing my husband. Had we waited, I can only know that how much I would have regretted that.
Oh yeah, and we'll come to that in a couple of minutes. But there's a couple of other things I want to touch on first, and another
Sure.
concept that I really enjoyed, and it just sort of caught me. I was at the grave of my mother not too many months ago,
Oh, sorry.
well, no, she passed on 20 years ago,
Oh,
but
okay.
I go back from time to
Yes.
time.
No, that's
But
good. Good.
but
I didn't realize.
but the grave marker had one of these things in it. It was a dash.
Yes.
It was, the day, from when she was born till the year that she died, and then there's a dash in between. And I thought, what a great image for us to recognize in our lives.
I wish it was mine, bud, and it certainly wasn't original. I did borrow it from someone, and I don't believe I could even give credit because I don't know where it came from. And in fact, there was an excellent image that someone created that basically was about that I put on my Facebook page, the Don't Die Before You're Dead Facebook page. And it just spoke to me as well, because that's the most important part of that marker, if you will. It's what did we do with that dash? I mean, everyone records our birth, our arrival, and our departure, and eventually they will record our dash, our in between years. And, that's a topic of a blog I'm working on with regards to what do you want people to say about you? Not now, because
Yeah.
who knows what people are saying now. And I've been told that's none of our business. But after we're gone, what is it we really want people to remember about us? And I think that's the dash. And I think, we see it all the time, but again, it's not part of the importance or the conscious part of our living. And I'd like it to be.
I'll tell you, in terms of using someone else's idea, the way I look at it is if the idea is old enough that the serial numbers are worn off, um, you don't have to credit it anymore. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I
I
just didn't want people to think it was mine, that I was this brilliant philosopher, but it is a very important aspect of how we look at our lives.
yeah, I totally agree. The another aspect is something that I encountered years ago, is the idea of fear. And I remember a speaker that I listened to years ago, a guy by the name of Ross Pete. He would talk about FOF and FOP. That's FOF and
Oh,
FOP. And it was fear of failure and fear of people. He says these are
okay.
the two biggest things that stop us. But you came
Mhm.
up with a third one, which was fear of success. And I'd
Yes.
never I'd never looked at it that way before. But
Yes.
maybe I'll let you expand on that.
We are familiar with the others, but we don't like to think that we're holding ourselves back. But I do believe that sometimes there is something in our lives called self-sabotage. And it's the fear of people to a certain extent, because if
Oh
we're
yeah.
successful, what does that mean to the people in our lives right now? And what they think becomes more important. And we look sometimes as, oh, I can't get too far ahead because then I won't associate with them, or they won't associate with me. And that success comes along with fear of change. We all know about fear of change.
Hmm.
When we become successful, there are all kinds of things that happen to change our perspectives, how we live, where we live, what we drive, how we dress, our attitudes about certain things. And that change will impact perhaps our whole social circle, our environment, and it's a big deal. So I
Yeah.
think sometimes people play small, if you will. They're just a little leery of going big. They might walk to the edge and look over and go, huh, but taking that leap might be more than they can handle. And it's the success. I think we're used to fear of failure from the time we were little, learning to walk and falling on our faces. And most of it, I mean, I've had enough that I could write another book about about the failure. But, we learn from that and we accept that as part of the necessary part of life. Everyone has some failure. And if they say they haven't, they're probably not telling you the truth, but success, we don't usually address that.
I was reading just this morning, Elon Musk says, if you have failed, congratulations. Most people don't even try.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I have to agree with your thinking there. The, your book gets very practical as well, and this is something that I really liked. You have some tools in there that I frankly had not encountered in that form before. One of them was the Cartesian logic The
Yes.
idea of mapping out what could happen if you try something. And the other one was the TAPS formula that you come up with. And I wonder
Mhm.
if you could expand on that a little bit.
Both of them, the Cartesian logic, I really liked for its all inclusiveness, if you will. Most of us have long since learned about the pros and cons list, and if you're if you live like I have, sometimes you just sort of already have an idea. You have the pros, you have the cons, and then if you find that it's swaying the way you don't really want it to go, you start making up these other things to pad the side you want, and it's not really a great decision making tool because we skew it. We put our own biases in it. But the Cartesian logic is really good because it makes you look at all sides of it. So what happens if you do? What happens if you don't? And then the other side of that is what won't happen if you do, and what won't happen if you don't. And it gives you
Yeah.
a much fuller perspective, like a 360 on a decision. And I like that because we're not so quick to skew it. We might. I mean, we're human beings. We might do that, but
Yeah.
maybe not quite so quickly. And as far as my TAPS program, the other aspect of all of that was in facing courage and facing success and facing other things, we need courage. And, it's kind of like, well, where do we learn that? I'm a retired teacher. I never taught my students, of course, on being courageous. And, we watch some movies and let's say, hey, that person was really, really courageous and, it took a lot of guts to go do that. But we don't
Yeah.
really learn how to do that. And the TAPS program for me was putting into perspective some steps to take. Your thinking, your mindset, the impressions that you get perhaps in forming those opinions. I mean, we all have opinions. Have you met anybody, Bud, that doesn't have an opinion? I haven't.
That's
So how we think needs to be addressed. And of course, our action. We can sit on the couch and think all day, but if we don't take action, nothing changes, right? We can talk big, but if we don't walk the talk, then nothing changes. And
yeah.
people, we need people. I needed people. I ended up in some circumstances where, honest to goodness, it's kind of like I no longer trust myself to make a good decision. I was ill-equipped, and so I went to find people. And some of the best people I found were actually authors in the library. I found what I call wisdom literature. And in a lot of the workshops that I've done, I've given people printouts of my list of books that I read, as I call wisdom literature. And of course, the last one is sustainability. You need, make sure that you're mustering up all this courage for something that you can do and it has long-term effects and you can maintain that or sustain it. So that's my approach to looking and saying, okay, fear of success, well, maybe you need courage. How can we do that? How can we do it
Yeah.
collectively? Because we won't do it by ourselves, I don't think. I couldn't.
Well, and it's so true. I totally agree with you about the idea that we have only a certain amount of time to work with. And I heard somebody say one time we all have exactly the same amount of time, and that is from when we're born till when we die. And it's no different, even though some of them are perceived as shorter.
I
But
like that.
but one of the things that I really came across, it was in your book. It wasn't the first time I'd seen it because I have a terrible time using a little two-letter word, and that is no. Uh, and I have a tendency more often than not to say, okay, sure, I can make that work, and try and take care of things. And you address in your book how that's a mistake.
Sometimes it is. And Bud, we're members of a very large club because so many of us have difficulty saying no. And we don't want to say no. People ask us to do things and we're helpful. We want to be a part of other people's lives. And it just seems a natural thing for us to want to step up to the plate. But when you are sacrificing too much in order to accommodate those around you, it's time to say, no, I need to be able to care for myself, for one thing, because I'm a strong believer in self-care. I don't believe any of us are better for giving our all. We drain the tank, we got nothing left to give anyone. And we can do that easily by saying yes, 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 yes to everything. And then we are running, well, look at our cars. How well are they going to run on fumes? We know that's not getting us anywhere. So we need to say no when it's detrimental to our well-being and those that we are immediately responsible for, our families, our loved ones. We can, I call it the hamster wheel. We can just on this old hamster wheel day after day after day with no time to reflect and think because we said yes to too much. We need balance, Bud, is
So
my,
right.
it's the
It's
balance.
it's probably not going to make it any easier for me to use the word no, but I keep it in mind. I mean, this is an important thing.
Yeah.
I have to I come now to a part of your book that I learned years ago the meaning of the word catharsis,
Ah,
um, because I think you do go through this a lot of things in your life that give you joy and give you sadness and make you think and make you anxious and reading the chapter about what happened with you and your husband Joe really touched me, and
thank you.
it really brought home the idea that you got to live life now.
Yes.
You can't just wait. But I'm going to let you talk a little bit about it because it frankly overwhelmed me a bit.
Well, it's a big deal. And to try and put it into the book to have legitimate purpose. First of all, my husband was my third husband, the love of my life, finally. I say I had two practice marriages. And the flip coin of that is I was his third wife. So it took us some time to kind of get to the place where we really were simpatico. It was really wonderful. We met in Teachers College. We both came to Teachers College in our 40s, and we had a lot going for us. He was very physical. He was a national swim champion for his age group, and we just never thought the time would come when we wouldn't be walking on the beaches hand in hand off into the sunset. But he ended up with a terminal illness that robbed him of his physicality. Mentally sharp, he was an academic, and his mind stayed intact, but it was progressive supranuclear palsy, which is an extreme ALS or Parkinson, but it robbed him of his physicality. He could no longer move. He actually passed because he couldn't swallow, he couldn't eat. But my point of putting it in the book, I'd like to honor my husband because we had a wonderful time, but we decided early in our marriage that we were going to buy this sailboat, and neither one of us knew how to sail. So there was a lot of caution, a lot of fear mongers out there telling us, oh, no, 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 oh, don't do that, for heaven's sakes, But we didn't listen. We thought we're both smart. So the first winter, Joe read how to sail. He was the captain, and I looked at how to buy a boat, because if you ever shop for something you know nothing about, you can't even ask some intelligent questions because you don't know anything. But we went ahead and we bought this boat, and we learned to sail. We went out on the lake and we came back. We went out on the lake and we came back. And our first trip, it took us 5 days to do this trip, and we ended up by land being an hour from home, but we sailed, and it was intentional. With the passing of my husband, I never expected to be a widow at my age or to lose such a vibrant, active man. Look at the memories that I have, Bud. The point of the story is that we lived and enjoyed everything that we had while we had it, while we were still working. Had we chosen to sail at retirement, I wouldn't be sitting here able to live life joyfully, miss him terribly, but appreciate the memories. So that's my real message to people, is life can be fickle, death is fickler. That's a word, more fickle. And we don't know. We have today. That's all we know. And I've talked to a lot of people. Um, there's so many that are in their old age with so many regrets, and that's not going to be me, because I know from
Yeah.
living that life, I spent 3.5 years 24/7 caring for my husband. An honor, a privilege. I wouldn't change that at all. And to honor him, to just keep living. And that's the message, Bud.
Yeah.
Every day is a measured amount of time that's gone. And what are we doing with our dash?
So true. So
Yeah.
true. I love that chapter, to tell you the truth, because as I say, while it was sad, there was joy, there was excitement, there was what the heck are we doing? There was all the stuff
Yes.
that you get in life, and I don't, I read somewhere that nobody on their deathbed regrets not spending more time at the office.
So
Uh,
true.
but I that brings me to a final note here regarding your book. I could talk to you about this book for a couple of hours, but then they wouldn't have to read the book, and we want them to read the book, right?
Oh,
Because
and use it.
well,
And use it.
that's just what I was coming to, because this isn't just a book for reading. This
Uh-huh.
isn't just a book about your road trip.
Yeah.
This is a book about the reader's road trip, about my road trip, and anybody else who reads it. And you devoted a significant portion of the road of the book to getting people to explore their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that whole concept. But I'm going to let you wrap up our conversation a bit on talking about that.
Okay. Well, like I said in the TAPS program that I have, to find the courage to go out and do the things that you think you want to do, rather than just saying, oh no, it's too late. It's never too late. I just took up skating again this year for the first time in well over 30 years, and I fell,
Wow.
and I just kind of did a little bit of damage, but hey, I got back up again, and I thought that was fun. Last summer I paddle boarded. That's the experience. That's what I want my life to be full of, the memories. So when and if I am no longer as agile as I think I am now, that I will have those memories that I did things that I didn't regret not trying. So the book was designed to invite people to into their own lives, to
Yeah.
invite them to. There's a calendar there, and it's not dated. Well, there's 12 months there and all the days and quotes and everything else, but you can start at any time. It doesn't go January to whenever. So jump right in. Record places you've been to, places you want to go to, people you've met. Maybe it's recipes. It's a keepsake. It's a treasure of experiences of your life. And I expect, when I do my cross Canada trip, I expect to take mine, and I expect it to be so full, I'm going to wrap it up with an elastic band. And if I could have figured out how to put one on the cover, I might have done that. But stuff it full of things, the momentums, the keepsakes, the memories, the pictures, whatever. And you know what? I can't imagine a better legacy to leave behind. So that it's kind
Yeah.
of like, maybe I could say it's a dash in action. It's a concrete concept of the dash. So it's,
Oh,
yes, here's the story. Here's why I can say to you, this is what life is for, even though mine's been crazy. And now here it is. Go live and do yourself. These are your memories. These are your keepsakes. Leave your dash behind.
and that's a terrific place to wrap this up. I want to thank you for spending some time with us today, Merri. We've been talking to Merri Macartney about her book, "Don't Die Before You're Dead," and as I said, this is a book that it's not just a book to read; it's a book to use. It's a book to keep. And I love the idea of using it as a diary and a storage place for memorabilia and things that you've done. I intend to use my copy that way. Uh,
Awesome.
I appreciate all the effort you put into this, And
Well,
I'm
thank
looking
you.
forward. I'm looking forward to your next book, the one about the cross Canada trip. I'm sure.
Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Thank you so much, Bud. This has been a real delight, and I appreciate the fact that you got something out of it. Because if it was just a story for me, there's no value there. But to to know that there's a life to live, and you're going to go live it, I'll be watching.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. You've been watching Book It, and keep your eyes open for future interviews with other authors. But today we've been interviewing Merri Macartney. Have a great day.